All right, all I want to say is that for the last week over on my streams over on Twitch, I was joking about it being Summer Morgan. I was like, oh, here would be like a really funny idea. What if they give me Summer Morgan for the anniversary servant? That means I don't have to stress about summer or anniversary because it'll be a 2-in-1. It'll be really easy for me exactly. But I was joking. Now I'm convinced that there's like a Lasengle agent just skulking around in my chat and they're like, you know what, that would be a really good idea. Let's help out our boy ZTL. But this Tonalico / Summer Morgan servant, as it does seem that the first two essentials over here are actually Tonalico. If you don't know who that is, spoilers for Lost Belt 6, but basically it's the original Morgan, right? It's like the journey that she went on, which is why she looks a little bit like Castoria. And then for the third ascension, you get Summer Morgan, right? They kind of combine them into one. This servant is very, very strong. Obviously, she is earning the like must summon title that I threw on the top of this video, but I also want to be a little bit reserved. I know everybody's probably expecting me to be just like flying all over the place, being like, you got to get the servant right now, but maybe it is just very early. The JP stream went very, very late for me, and maybe I'm just a little bit more mellow and thinking about it, but it's one of those servants where she definitely, I feel, you want to have people like Koyanskaya and especially Oberon, because as we've been testing this servant, you know, before I actually decided to sit down and record the video on her, it came to light that she seems to be a little bit better with double Oberon than double Koyanskaya, which is currently making me rethink my GSSR decisions over on my JP because I don't have either one of them, right? And I did get this servant and my first couple of multis, you know, Morgan is my husband. Of course, she would come run into my Chaldea no matter what version it is. But the fact that I don't have Oberon or even Koyanskaya really does worry me about how much usage I can actually get out of this servant, right? Because she is an AoE buster caster and she's got a really good skill set. She's very strong, but you really want to have both Oberon and Koyanskaya, which does make her quite a hefty requirement for a lot of masters because you want to do double Oberon, but you also really want Koyanskaya for the third skill. So let's kind of start breaking this down. What does she actually do? So starting off with the first skill over here, this is kind of just Merlin's NP as a skill. I mean, minus the HP regen, but you actually gain the ability to give yourself like, you know, big NP damage and a 50% battery because she's more of an offensive servant. But giving the entire party 10% NP every single turn, 10 stars every turn, that's definitely pretty strong. You get two of the more strong effects from Merlin's NP plus a little bit of offensive buffs. It also makes her very, very strong with Oberon, like I was talking about just a little bit earlier, because she gives herself big fat globs of NP damage. I know that 20% right here doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when we get to her third skill, you'll see that, yeah, she's going to work very well with Oberon, especially if you picked up Black Grail last year as a JP player. She's going to be absolutely killer with that. Just because she's giving herself so much NP damage, and Oberon's third skill maximizes that, right? It makes your NP damage just go through the roof, right? So this is a very strong skill. You can use it as kind of a pseudo support. It's nice, but obviously, you know, it's just standard.jpg good stuff. Good 50% battery for buster farming. You know, the NP damage works very well with Oberon. And hey, look at that. You can even help out some of your other buster guys. I don't know if you're using her with, say, Merlin for more of a challenge quest, right? Being able to get Merlin closer to his own NP is very, very strong. But again, this is only the first skill. Let's talk about the second one, where I know this looks really crazy. People are like, what is going on right here? Basically, this is a attack buff that's 20% that she gives to herself and the entire party. But the lesser her HP is, the more actual damage she gets. So if you do have Black Grail on her, after that first tick of Black Grail, bada boom, bada bing, you've got an extra 10% attack buff over here, right? So you're at 30% for yourself. And then if you can fall a little bit lower with, say, someone like Koyanskaya, if you're using double of her, you might be able to lower your HP enough to get down to the 75% over here, plus the Black Grail. So she could potentially start looking at, say, a 40% attack buff for herself, which is very good because, spoiler alert, she'll be able to get up to a 50% NP damage buff and then potentially anywhere between 20 to 40% attack. And then she also has a buster buff, so she can triple buff herself on top of obviously being a modern servant who does have a damage mod, right? So she could potentially quadruple buff herself, especially with, say, Koyanskaya's second skill giving her even more damage mods, which does help her damage out a lot because not like she needs the damage mods, but it would be very nice if she could find it every now and then. Then she obviously, you know, just has another skill that is bombing 10 stars at the end of every turn. Think of, say, like Galatea, how at the end of your turn, Galatea gives you the heal and the debuff cleanse. It's kind of like that. So at the end of your turn, you're going to be dropping 10 stars. So realistically, she's dropping like 20 stars a turn, which is pretty nice, right? It does make her like a nice crit support. Unfortunately, she does not have her own crit buffs, but again, if you're using her with, say, Merlin or Koyenskaya, when, you know, crits might actually be relevant, then she'll at least have enough stars in rotation, on top of being a caster where her natural star weight's a little bit better than, I mean, it's not crazy or anything, right? But it's a little bit better than, say, I don't know, if she was Jalter or like a Berserker who have like negative star weight. So, you know, it's not too bad. It's not the worst thing in the world. But then finally, there's her third skill. This is where things get a little bit nutty. Now, you may be looking at this being like, dude, 50% NP for the entire party. Everybody's getting 30% NP damage, and she's giving everybody a guts. That is crazy. And yes, it is indeed very crazy. This is super dummy, stupid nuts, right? But you got to look at this right here. Now, what this says is basically this skill starts off on a 5-turn cooldown. Like, it already appears, it's grayed out as if it's been used, and you've got to wait 5 turns to get it back. That's why people like Koyenskaya are really good with her, because Koyenskaya reduces her cooldown by 2, so you can actually get the skill back a lot faster. But you don't just have to rely on Koyenskaya for this one, because her own NP does lower the cooldown on this. But again, that's also why you want to have, say, a Koyenskaya floating around, because you might be looking at this and being like, dog, she's going to lower her cooldown by 8? That's not what that means. This means it's 1 stage of cooldown for her third skill only. So it only affects the cooldown of the third skill over here, but obviously so you can start using your NP as fast as possible. It does have a little bit of a funny interaction with the original Morgan, because the original Morgan will increase her overcharge, which will then make it easier for her to get her third skill back. So it's funny that they have a little bit of synergy there. But then you can also see over here that she's giving herself a 30% buster buff to at least a 50% if you do want to go for higher NP copies. So not only will her damage scaling go up as you get a higher leveled NP, but you'll also get even more buster damage for her to do even more damage. It's kind of like getting extra copies does a lot more for this servant, right? And then as you can see right here, she has her special damage mod against evil people over here. And then if you're using her in, say, more of a challenge quest mode, or you're going to be fighting a boss, she will get even more damage by lowering the enemy's defense by 20%. Unfortunately, it doesn't actually proc first, so you know, you can't take advantage of that in, say, normal farming. But I have gone to the liberty of kind of doing a calc. Now I know this says Solomon right here, just ignore that. This is her attack stat with like the foe, because as you can see, she has 11-8 right here, and I just put it at 12 for, you know, foeing it. And this is like what I think kind of a best case scenario can kind of look like for her, like 32 if you manage to get the HP down. But let's kind of go down to what she should normally be looking at: a 30% buster buff, 50% NP damage, and a 20% attack buff, right? She'll be around that 27k range, which isn't the worst thing in the world, right? Especially for an AoE caster. I mean, that's a bit higher than, you know, Nero over here. That's pretty nice. And she's also got like the 50% battery. So it's a little bit above that, but it's not exactly the craziest thing. But at least no matter what setup you're using, no matter what set of supports you have to use, maybe you're like, I'm going to make this work with like some weird waiver double Oberon plug suit, whatever you're going to be doing, right? As soon as that first tick of Black Grail hits, her damage does hit a pretty acceptable level, right? You'll see that it kind of jumps to around this 30k range. And now this might be a little bit different because, you know, depending on who you're actually fighting and whatnot, but this is kind of like the general gist, just kind of looking at the raw stats and the raw numbers. She should be somewhere in this range. That's not bad. 30k, that's kind of where you want to be at right now in the meta. Like, that's not a bad place to be without your damage mod, right? Because if you look at people like, say, Mordred or Gilgamesh, they've also, after their buffs, they've kind of put them in that same range. Like, see, Mordred now is around like this 30k range. Gilgamesh, after his buff without his damage mod, is in kind of this range. This seems to be kind of like a good spot for a servant to be in before getting any of their damage mods or anything. Because, you know, if we add her power mod buff over here, we say you're fighting a evil person, she shoots up way higher, right? But that's pretty normal. Even for like these AoE guys, they can start doing some good damage. Although I guess she jumps pretty high up because more than 47. But you get what I'm saying, right? Well, I guess, okay, for Gil's defense, she does quadruple buff her in that scenario, right? Because she gives herself every single buff type. But, you know, her damage does go through the roof. But is she like this must-summon servant? You gotta grab her. If you don't have her, you're throwing your account away. No, I don't think she is that insanely good, but I think she is very, very strong. The fact that she can loop and you kind of be your farmer and everything, that's very nice. And she also works kind of like a pseudo support or your other support, right? Like, even if you're not going to be getting any of the offensive buffs over here because you're using, say, Merlin or something, the fact that you can kind of be reducing your own NP, like, skill 3 cooldown, right? You could be doing that on overcharge, and you could be getting this in some kind of frequency, especially if you have, say, Kolya and Sky in the team. You can kind of expect to see it a little bit more often than once every 10 turns. Still won't be seeing it like, oh, every other turn or something like that, but you'll, at least probably get to pop it off maybe a few times during a fight if you're using like an actual boss killing team, something along those lines. I think that's very, very nice, but then I think you get more out of her and say like a double, I want to say like Summer Morgan setup. Like, I feel like you could kind of get a lot more out of that, because then they'll both just give each other all of these buffs. You'll have like 40 stars per turn because of both of their skills. Like, I think that sounds really fun. Like, something I may try and something I might use in like a different video is like a double Summer Morgan plus normal Morgan, something along those lines. That sounds like a very fun team comp, because then Morgan again will be increasing their overcharge on like their NP over here, and then they'll be able to get to their third skills even faster, which then helps Morgan get to her NP faster because of this, which then helps them get to their NP. Like, it just starts to turn into like a cycle, right? It becomes very cyclical. So I think that sounds very fun. Probably not like the best team in the world, but I think it'd be very, very fun. But I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you've gone ahead and pulled for this servant. People always tell me that my videos are catalysts for them, but I'm sorry, if you didn't get your Summer Morgan, then I have completely drained all of your luck, because look, Morgan's my husband and she had to come home. But with all that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one. You guys have yourselves a nice night. Peace late, guys.